Tony Holler, and this is from the Track Football Consortium held at Ankeny, Iowa. Our best consortium yet, just fantastic. If you have not seen the other videos, you need to see them. I like to talk about learning how to cook and that the recipe evolves. I'm always arguing with trolls out there that say that Feed the Cats is a systems and systems fail and things like that, that somehow people are copycatting the Feed the Cats recipe or something, and that just does not happen. The second generation Feed the Cats coaches are much better than I am because they have learned how to cook and then their recipe evolves. The 5 stages of evolution as a coach. You know nothing, but you know it all. I think we can all understand this. Most people go into coaching and they're very confident, and they don't have a whole lot of basis for that confidence. Then you learn how to follow a recipe. Basically, it's like, you watch people who do things well and try to copy it. But if you're really lucky, you learn how to cook. And by learning how to cook, your recipe can evolve and you're not tied to any single way of doing anything. Then you become a chef. And then the final stage, and I'm not so sure you want to get to this stage, is you start making charts that impress Stu McMillan at Altus. Right after I announced that my talk at this TFC was going to be how to cook, it may have just been coincidence, but Stuart McMillan seems to have a lot of coincidental stuff that he puts out. But anyway, he put this out soon after I announced my topic. He said, just because you can cook doesn't mean you're a chef. Because in the Altus world, sophisticated complexity is what seems to rule the day. This is one of Stu's graphs right now, right here. This graph, I don't understand what in the hell it means, but the people in his echo chamber seem really impressed with this type of work. This is not Stu McMillan, but somebody else that I have a lot of respect for, and he spoke at a TFC once. But as soon as I saw that he put out this and this and this, I knew that he would be speaking at Altus soon, because he was obviously trying to catch the eye of Stu and the other complex dudes that are in the professional coaching ranks and probably the college coaching ranks as well. My graphs will never get any respect from Altus or a college coach, because I'm always looking for just effective simplicity. I like Don Meyer's 3 stages of coaching. Don Meyer's my favorite basketball coach of all times. Blind enthusiasm. Blind enthusiasm, great way to term what coaches are like when they first get into the business. Then comes sophisticated complexity. And this is where I think most college coaches and most professional coaches find themselves. When I go to not a TFC, but a normal coaching clinic, I see complexity everywhere. It's like the presenters need to show you how complex they are to tell you why they're speaking, and you paid a couple $100 to see them speak. I love the 3rd stage, mature simplicity. Now, I always joke that I'm the most immature 62-year-old man I've ever known. And I've always thought that was kind of sad that I've never matured. Maybe I'd hung around with high school kids for the last 40 years. That probably made me immature. I don't know. But the more I read, immaturity is actually goes along with creativity. Sometimes maturity, on the other hand, you become very efficient at the things that you need done, and those well-worn grooves in your brain keep you from branching out. That's probably one of the reasons, no, it is a big reason, why many of the greatest artists, musicians, and authors have often looked towards alcohol and other intoxicants to bring around creativity. It sounds weird, but maturity does not always go together with creativity. So maybe my immature simplicity is not such a bad thing. How did we get here? I'm going to try to talk about, most people know that Feed the Cats is very different than traditional sports in America. And I want to talk about how we got so traditional. And really it's widespread. It's about 98% traditional still. We learn best from imitating those around us. We are copycats. This is so important. I think it's really important as a teacher and coach and a parent as well. If you do not model what needs to be done, if you don't show what needs to be done and show it in a almost like a perfect way, you are really missing out on the best way for kids to learn. Now, that's a good thing about copycat imitation stuff. The bad thing about imitating those around us is that we will also imitate the mistakes. This is how traditions start and continue for years and years and years, because the new generation just copies the old generation. That's definitely happened in sports. Almost all of us belong to the same religion as our parents or those closest to us. Now, I don't mean anything bad about this. I'm just saying that we are copycats. We tend to align ourselves with the crowd. My father-in-law was not a very religious person, to say the least, but his mother was a strong Southern Baptist. I was in the room one night when my father-in-law asked his mother, would you have been a Southern Baptist if you were born in Calcutta? And she says, why, certainly. And he just kind of laughed, because we all know that we are probably going to be the religion of our family, the cultural stuff that's around us is going to determine how we grow up. We belong to the same political party as our parents or those around us. We are extremely tribal. By tribal, I mean you join the group that you're around. So if you're around Republicans, you're probably a Republican. We parent like we were parented. There's no better gift than a parent can give their kids that is modeling how to treat their future kids. I see this all the time. I think we're really going through a tough time in America right now because we don't have as many kids. I grew up in a family of 4. I was 10 years old when we got a baby. So I got to see how babies were treated. If you have a family of 2, we're missing a lot of that modeling that maybe former generations had. We teach the way we were taught. You know, I don't think modern classrooms were much different than the high school classrooms I was in the 70s. We coach the way we were coached. And once again, this is how tradition gets started. This is how tradition continues. Even if tradition is not the best way to do it, we tend to stay traditional. We are all products of our time and place. All this stuff about free will is BS. Sure, we get to make decisions, but there are so many things that we think we chose that we really didn't choose. Conformity was favored in evolution. This sounds weird, but if you're a conformist, you were a part of a group that protected you. Now, you had to kind of go along with the group. You may have to dress like they do, talk like they do, think like they do, except, you know, they're going to sacrifice a goat every 4 weeks or whatever type of ceremonies they did. You had to go along. And the benefit of going along was that you were in a group that could keep you safe. And you were much more likely to pass on your genes. In other words, you're much more likely to have sex with the opposite sex and have babies, which means we had more and more conformists. Whereas a nonconformist, or like, to hell with this group, he goes lives in his own cave, probably doesn't survive long enough to have offspring. So conformists outnumber nonconformists, and that's evolution. And that's why we are still looking to be like people around us and to copy the traditions of the area that we're working in. This is called the Ash experiment.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1.
1. 2.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3.
3.
3. 3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again.
I think that's pretty powerful. In the Ash experiment, the percentage of people who eventually conformed to the thoughts of the group was 37%. Now, we're not just conforming like wearing the same type of jeans or something. We're talking about choosing the wrong answer just to conform. If you think about that, that's a really scary thing, and you could probably plug that into a lot of things going on in America right now. That people conform to the ideas of the people they associate with, even if those ideas are not factual. The mission of education in America. I bring this up because I think it's important to understand why we do things the way we do. Rule number 1, obey all rules. Man, it's a big rule thing to go to school in America. Follow all directions. Respect authority. The key to success is hard work. This is the religion behind education in America, that somehow, no matter what type of skills you have, if you work hard enough in America, you can become a heart surgeon. Sit down, shut up, raise your hand to speak. The old thing that for the first 5 years, our kids learn how to move around and talk. And then they go to school and they learn how to sit down and shut up. This is pretty scary stuff. And I realized too, I was a teacher for 38 years. I understand when you have 30 kids in a class, it's very important to have good classroom management. You can't go to the restroom without permission. That's one of the things that killed me. I did not allow students to raise their hand to ask to go to the restroom. They got up and went. Study. Study. That was, another religion of education. That's like a centerpiece. And so many times it was remember the answers. As long as you remember the answers on the test, you did well. And it took study to memorize lots of answers. Take all required courses and pass all standardized tests. The curse of modern education. And of course, don't forget this, that education, most importantly, is daycare. And we're not just talking about your 5 and 6 year olds. Daycare for high school students, very, very important. because high school students are scary. They're not helpless like a 5-year-old. It's the opposite. It's because they can get in so much trouble when they're on their own that they need to be locked in, no coming and going. High school kids can't go out for lunch. They're locked into that school building. And then we hope that all of them are busy in extracurricular activities after school so that parents don't have to worry about them from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. Mandatory attendance is huge. And this makes me sick, but preparation for the next grade level that we have now become, at least in my high school, is 100% college prep. We have no other lanes for kids to go through. They're not building houses or learn how to repair engines. Instead, they are all treated like future college students. So when you say, what are we preparing them for? It's usually for college. 6th grade prepares kids for 7th grade. It's always about the next grade level. Now, the mission of sports, I put this on here because sports echo so many of the things that are in education. But I have to go back for this. This is pretty important. Of all these rules, I want to ask you right now to think about this. Of all these missions, how many of these make kids want to go to school? Isn't that crazy? There's not a damn thing in these 11 items that would make me as a 16-year-old say, man, I can't wait to go to high school this year. But this is really, I don't know if high schools even care. It's like, nope, you're just going to take the courses we tell you to take and then pass the standardized test, and you got to study and work real hard, and follow all the rules and obey authority and blah, blah, blah. And so there's not a whole lot to get excited about. So when 2/3 of all high school kids say they hate school, maybe they have a point. So the mission of sports: obey all rules. So there's going to be a lot of overlap here. Follow directions, of course. You better follow directions the first time or we're going to run you. Respect authority. Yes, sir. No, sir. Loyalty. Oh, yeah. This is a little bit different than, I don't think kids are ever loyal to their chemistry teacher. But you better be loyal to your football coach. Mandatory attendance. Well, that's another. Of course, you got to go to practice every day. The key to success is hard work. Once again, we're in that Protestant work ethic type of thing that we tell that 96-pound freshman that if he works really hard, he could make it to the NFL someday. It's just not true, but we just treat that as like, for sure. Like we're telling the kids every day, anything is possible with hard work. Turning boys into men, this is a little bit different. This is weird stuff. I never hear about turning girls into women in sports, but this is a big thing because there's such a military influence on sports in the last 100 years in America that this is a real thing. It's kind of weird. Teamwork, this is one thing. Gosh, you got to love that. But I think coaches sometimes think that they created this love of teamwork. And once again, it goes back to evolutionary times. Those that were good at teamwork, who were genetically predisposed to want to conform and be on a team and follow the rules and respect authority and all those things, they lived in groups. They lived in clans. They lived in large extended families that protected each other. And those people had a tendency to survive long enough to maybe foster 5, 6, 7 kids. And so their genes of conformity and wanting to be a part of a team became the dominant evolutionary thing. Whereas the people, the nonconformists, the people who were like, screw the team, I'm going to go off on my own, they got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something when they were 12. Physical, mental, and moral transformation. once again, sports, this is pretty crazy, but we get this, of course, from the military, and there's a lot of military stuff. If you really look at sports and what we really do, a lot of it sure sounds like the Army. And then, of course, win games. Now, compared to school, where we had 11 items and we're 0 for 11 in any type of like, boy, that sounds fun. To me, number 8 and number 10 makes me want to play because I want to be a part of a team. That sounds fun. Just like so many people, we are just evolutionary predisposed to want to join a team and work together for a common goal and to feel like we have an extended family. So many teams say, we are family, all about family. Well, that's playing right into what kids want out of a sport. And then the win games. Gee, there's no winning games in education. I guess you can pass tests, but I've never felt the same after getting an A on a chemistry test as I felt after winning a football game. So this whole military thing, I had a football coach in high school that said, we're going to break you down and then build you back up, because this is what he heard. He probably heard football coaches say this. For sure it came from the military, where they try to take the if a kid comes in opinionated and undisciplined, that they want to break that guy. They want to break him, and then they're going to build him back up as the Marine that they want him to be. It's kind of like the way we break horses. A high-spirited horse that doesn't want to be domesticated has to be broken. And so many in education, many in sports think that we have to break kids. Now, I'm saying this stuff because this is not a feed the cats approach. I'm not so sure we should be breaking kids. I know I was broken as a high school football player. I was broken, I think, in the first 3-hour practice on the first morning of double sessions. Now, I could barely walk into the second practice, and our coaches all kind of smiled at each other and said we did our job. As a sophomore basketball coach, as a sophomore basketball player, I was averaging about 20 points a game, and our team was, won the conference and stuff. I thought I should have been starting on the varsity, but my dad was the varsity coach, and he didn't think that would be a wise thing, to have me brought up to the varsity. So anyway, this coach was kind of a Bobby Knight, old schooler type guy, and he used to always talk about our team having prima donnas. And he'd always look at me. And I really didn't know what in hell he's talking about. I thought it just meant, that you were confident or something like that. But a prima donna is a female opera singer with a grand offstage personality, temperamental with an inflated view of themselves. And so when he was calling us prima donnas, and specifically me, that's kind of like trying to break a guy, like a high-spirited horse. Instead of building me up and to even have more confidence, he wanted to take that confidence that I had away. He wanted me to not get cocky. And I think coaches do that all the time. And it's really like breaking a horse. Or it's like breaking a slave. Frederick Douglass, you can tell by looking at him, he wasn't easily broken. He was a high-spirited guy. He was a guy that was destined for great things. So as a young slave, he was sent to Mount Misery. That doesn't sound much fun. And Mount Misery was a place that bragged that they could break slaves. In other words, they're going to turn that wild slave into a domesticated slave. And it didn't work in Frederick Douglass's place, nor should we be trying to do that to kids. Time for a revolution. I think the Feed the Cats approach is revolutionary. And that's why we went through those slides just now, is that sports and education in America have been very military-based, very much based on hard work. And I think there's things other than hard work that we should be thinking about in sports. Now, it's interesting that in this industrial age that we're just now coming out of, the reason why education and sports wanted to instill certain values into kids is because the industrial age required those traits. If you see here, oh, you better be, if you're going to have a job, let's say a factory job or something, you better obey the rules, and you better follow directions, and you better respect authority, and the key to success is hard work, and you better show up every day, and you better have a lot of discipline, and you better produce. So what schools tried to do is turn out kids that had these traits. And outside the industrial age where we are now, these traits don't matter much. Back then, show up every day, hard work, respect authority, obey the rules, follow instructions. I mean, all those things got you a good job, you were probably able to afford a house, and then you got a pension someday, and it all worked out pretty well. Here's a typical teacher, one of my favorite cartoons. I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. This is the dichotomy. This is the problem we have in schools and in sports, both, is that the things we want are not the things we get. This is a good book, Homo Deus, and this guy said that we're going to have an entire group of people real soon that are not employable. That literally, if you have a job where all you have to do is follow directions, like the industrial age jobs, that job will not be there very soon. They're already disappearing. So if you are this useless class, will be unemployable. They'll accept like a UBI, a universal basic income, and they'll stay home and play video games or something and look forward to their next meal. But they will not be employable because jobs that are simply obeying rules and following directions probably are not going to be there much longer. The assembly line that we saw a couple slides back, it looks a lot different today. It's automated. The people who used to be standing on both sides of this automobile assembly line, they're not there anymore. They're robots. I think we need to teach athletes to build their own house. And this is not traditional sports, but this comes from, of course, the great book, Chop Wood, Carry Water. And there was a master builder in Tokyo named Koda. And Koda built homes for about 30 years. His homes were amazing. They were famous. They said, "Oh, that looks like a Koda home," And it was famous because they took a long time to build them. Everything about it was first class. And after 30 years, Koda went into his employer and said, "I'd like to put in my 2-week notice that I want to resign. My wife and I want to travel before we get too old." And the guy interrupted him and said, "Hey, I got a huge favor to ask. We have one more house, just one." And Koda was not very happy with this, but he said, "Okay, I'll do it." And so he built this house using whatever materials he could find. He didn't want to wait for materials because he wanted to get the damn thing done. And he outsourced labor. However he could cut a corner here and there to get it done quicker, he did. And he got it done in a little less than 4 months. So he goes into the boss and says, "I have it done. Can I now have your blessing on retirement?" And the boss said, "I have one more thing for you." He brought out this beautiful black box with a bow on it. And Koda opened the box and found house keys. He had just built his own house, but yet he'd built a house that was inferior to the homes that he typically built. And I think this has such a strong message for us as coaches, that too many times we have pushed a kid into being an athlete. We have motivated, yelled at, punished, whatever we had to do to get a kid to do what we wanted him to do, that he was never building his own house. And when you feel pushed to do something instead of encouraged to do something, then you have a tendency to not have a good product. I just look back. I remember watching a terrible cross-country coach, and he'd send them out on a 5-mile run, and all of them would jump into a car and go to the park and then get left off somewhere else, and they would run about half a mile. They cheated. And that was because they never felt like they were building their own house. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I think Feed the Cats is that model. I think it's a new way of looking at teaching and coaching that really makes sense. And from the same book, Homo Deus, revolutions are usually made by small networks of agitators rather than the masses. And I kind of think that's what TFC kind of is. Like we're a small network of agitators, of creative thinkers, rebel talents that challenge the masses, that challenge tradition, and and it'd be one thing if we're challenging tradition and stuff. That's okay, but when it's so much better for kids, that's when it really gets huge.